Record. Right. Okay. So welcome everyone. I'm just going to get all my screen ready and set up, ready to go. Admits last few people, and then yeah, I just wanted to obviously go through, you know, this afternoon. Obviously, this morning went smoothly. We obviously made profit on USDJPY straight away, bang, and then obviously made profit. A little bit of profit on GBP USD, but obviously, like always, closed out, and obviously then wanted to go through everything. Right, so I'm just going to explain, obviously, some of the positions we were caught on. Gold, happy. One thing that I mentioned to everyone, and apologies if you're, new and obviously you haven't seen this, but I want to explain it and obviously explain how it works because today is prime. All right. Not every day is going to be get the, exact pinpoint entry, obviously, like we did with USDJPY this morning. It just tapped into our box and then went, and it was, the trade was obviously over and done within about half an hour. That's quite rare. All right. And so, gold was a very, very good example here. What I always recommend is splitting the, zone. I always get asked, even if, we're trading, obviously we're within the, zone. I always get asked if we're in a bit of drawdown. Are you holding? Are you holding? Uh, Truth is yes. Because anywhere within a zone, I'm comfortable. All right. Once we start to come through, and like I always mentioned, a 2 hour close below, that's when I'm gonna really, probably focus in on this trade and obviously look to manage out. All right. But obviously, until that time comes, I'm comfortable. I'm happy. All right. But what I mentioned to everyone, and it works brilliantly. All right. And today is a prime example. All right. So markets, I wouldn't say have moved much this afternoon at all. If we look at gold, we have moved. Sorry, I'm just going to move this up here because I just like it up there. So if we look at gold, we've had 1 o'clock. All right, we've had. Let's just go to obviously half an hour to explain. So 1:30. Yeah, there we go. So the price action this afternoon has been this. All right, not much at all. Just came down, come back up, just obviously trading within this candle here. All right. Everything's been pretty, similar. GBP, yes, we've obviously had this pop up here, but obviously we've, returned down here also. All right. So gold. What I recommend is almost splitting the zone up into three. All right. Top, middle, and bottom. All right. Now, what I would recommend is, splitting obviously your maximum lot size into three. However you want to risk, that is up to you. But obviously, that's what I would recommend. And obviously, today is prime. And one reason why I think it's a good idea to do this is I want everyone to get comfortable being in drawdown. All right, because everyone is uncomfortable. All right, it's the truth. Whenever a trade is in a bit of drawdown, everyone gets, itchy and uncomfortable, similar as whenever a trade's in a nice bit of profit, they get itchy and uncomfortable. Now, one thing that I think helps with drawdown is, staggering your trades, right? So we're going to use gold as an example here. This is our, entry zone here. All right. So anywhere within this box, for those of you who aren't in the inner circle, I am happy to enter. All right. Now, yes, the initial reaction, the impulse is entered straight away. All right. And obviously, yes, USDJPY, literally we had a tap like this and then it just went boom. So those things do happen. All right. But what I would recommend, right, is splitting into three. All right. And I've got them all, laid out here for everyone to see. All right. And one of the things why this works very, very well is you get comfortable in drawdown. You actually find yourself wanting this price to get tapped, because we're confident in our direction. All right. Anywhere within that zone, we got to stay confident. All right. Let's, face it, 9.9 times out of 10 or 9.5, if you want to be not so generous, we've got direction right. That's one thing I'm very, very good at is impulse direction. All right, no one speaks about it because no one understands it, but I get the direction right. Why? Because macros are published data. All right, so and I've obviously learned, been taught how to understand them. So that's why we don't find many stop losses hit. All right, and even if we do, we've got a get out of jail chance, which I'm going to show you this afternoon or this evening. So for example, the reason I think within this, zone, staggering your trades is going to really, really help you is because I'm just gonna, yeah, is because you're obviously going to be wanting them to trigger, all right? And gold is a prime example. Everyone's worrying, but obviously the guys who are getting used to it, getting into it, they are understanding that obviously they actually want this one to tap, because then this is what ends up happening. It doesn't have to do very much for you to make very, very good profit. All right, or worst case, which I'm going to show you in a minute, scaling out. All right, so that was obviously one here. Gold scaled out of it. Euro didn't tap. All right. USCJPY again. All right. I've obviously marked up here. Just gonna get it here. And so I've marked up. If you'd have had entry at the top, entry at the bottom, you can see here, this is our middle ground here. So we can obviously identify that, potentially it's not going to go into to plan. So obviously you've got this window here, anywhere above here, this window here, you can close out and you'd be about break even, little bit of profit. All right. That's the beauty of not just coming in straight at the top. Remember, I'm not trading lines. I'm not trading one price. I don't believe in it. I believe in an entry, zone. All right. It's impossible to get an exact price right. All right. So I believe in an entry, zone, which I can get pretty accurate, which obviously you guys have, seen. So obviously that is one thing that I would look at. USDJPY, come out of that break even. Let's go for GBP next. This was obviously the, worrying one. It broke out of the zone on a 30-minute, but on the 2 hour, you can see how it closed. It closed comfortably. All right. Now, what did we end up having here? All right. One, two, three positions. Yeah. All right. This price only had to go down to here for us to be break even. It actually finished up in a little bit of profit if you'd have obviously held it. So these are obviously all things that you've got to be aware of. And even though this trade has gone, slightly against us, it's been the worst one of today. You can see here the 2 hour, that's obviously keeps our trade, validating. I still, by the looks of it, macro consumer confidence came out good today. Trend wise, we're obviously still, as you can see here, trending to the downside. We've not broken and made a new high here. So overall expectations is that this should obviously continue to the downside. All right. AUD USD is the only one which would have obviously closed that out in a little bit of a loss. I think halfway was about here. So obviously it would have needed to have come down here. But overall, if we're using the basket with gold, with GBP USD, you should have, managed your way out of today. And obviously I know that, lots of you have, so yeah, this is a really, really good example here of obviously utilizing, staggering your positions, not just going all in here. Potentially, if you're doing normally like a one lot trade, yes, you're going to be taking slightly less profits. Maybe you would go for like a 1.5, yeah, and then you go zero point 0.5 here, zero point 0.5 here, and then zero point 0.5 here, because you're obviously, the higher you go up, the more value for money that trade is. So yeah, you can probably risk a little bit more, obviously higher up, but the main thing is keeping it even, because obviously as you've seen here, all of them, will have an opportunity to obviously come out at break even. And I think the most important days and times, as if you're struggling to consistently be profitable, the most important days are times when it goes against you. All right. And I think you've got to also look back, to obviously the times where you potentially blown an account or, and yeah, if times like this have happened, like I had someone the other day, it wasn't one of our trades at all. But if I go on gold here, I had someone the other day. When was it? I think it was this here. Yeah, there we go. So if I go on the 30-minute here, right, someone tried to, sell gold here. All right. They've tried to sell it. All right. Now, if you look at our trade here, all right, 140. Yes, I know it wasn't quite at the top, and it's not going to be quite as big a move. But I don't know about everyone who was in this trade. I was pretty comfortable. All right. Now, this guy here has blown an account between here and here. All right. Now, why has he blown it? All right, or why is it common? And obviously it's not going to be the only one. I think, I did it a lot, yeah, years ago because, everyone's looking at, right, you know what, double top. We've had, price consolidate here. So I'm going to enter, shorts. You might have even tried, shorting here, taken profit. It's popped up again. You've shorted again, taken profit. And then you've then tried shorting a third time, and then it's obviously gone against you. What have you done? Enter, 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 blown. All right. Rather than having a bit more of a structured approach, not that we obviously would have been, selling gold because it's obviously anti, uh, macros. It's anti, risk. But if you'd have had something a bit like this, where you were like, right, you know what, I am looking, to sell it here, and actually, I'm gonna, sell here. We're gonna sell in the middle, and then we're gonna sell at the top. This candle here, you would have got out of this in profit because it's structured. All right. It's structured. Whereas if you are rather than staggering it properly, if you're entering like this, like you are just in trouble, you know? So that's obviously one thing that you've got to be aware of. And obviously, yeah, like I've mentioned, it's the days where markets go against you, which is the real test. It's not the ones where it goes with you. There's a lot of luck in trading. Um, and I don't mean to obviously burst anyone's bubble, but we've all had it. I had my biggest day, before I become profitable. Um, I made this was on about 4.5 lots on gold. I held it for a day. I turned like 3K into, I think, like 21K. All right. So I made like 18K, right, in a day. And I've told this, story a few times. I took, my missus out for dinner. I was popping champagne. I was like the happiest guy. I've cracked the code. I'm never gonna have to work again in my life. Like this is easy. Woke up early, next day pumped because this was a Thursday. I woke up on a Friday, like, yeah, you know what? I've got this. This is easy. Trading is, I've mastered it now. I blew it all 21K. I went into the weekend with zero. So that's the realism. All right. Now, and obviously this is one thing that I like to educate on and like to obviously help on because, you want to make sure that, you appreciate when obviously, you've been a bit lucky and obviously markets have gone with you, you might have got in, everyone has that perfect trade. And it's normally after you've lost a ton because you've got that grit in your teeth just to hold it, and it doesn't happen often. But yeah, that's why I just stick to, routine is everything. Routine is everything and structure. And obviously the more structure that you've got, the better. Yeah. So yeah. Right. Does anyone have any questions? I've got a picture here from Mark, exactly how I did it. Good job. What I like to do in these, lives is obviously open the floor up, ask me anything, I'm happy to go through anything. It doesn't matter how, stupid the question might come across, so yeah, ask me anything that you want to, not a problem at all. Does anyone have any questions? Surely someone's got a question. Write it in the chat. Surely, surely. If not, I can, make some stuff up. That's no problem at all. How do you put your entries? So I obviously go with, macros. So I could go with, overall, macros. One thing that's important to, me is and obviously one thing that I realized from the last meeting I had with with a hedge fund um was that I I realized that you've got to specialize in something. All right, you can't be a jack of all trades in this industry. All right, you got to have one kind of master currency. And that's why I've kind of used the US dollar as my master currency, because I'm obviously pretty good at it, and obviously I can identify what is stronger or weaker than the US dollar at any time. So you know so 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 one thing one thing that I'd like to do is before I even look at any of the other charts, I'm doing everything off a 2 hour too, because obviously I'm an intraday trader, and that's the highest highest. I've some of these words that are in my head are not in there anymore. But obviously that gives me the best outlook. So what I like to do is before I've looked at anything, AD, USD, GBP, USD, Euro, USD, USD, JPY, gold, I will identify which way I'm going to take them. All right. So before I've even looked at a ch chart, and I recommend everybody starts to obviously have a little think about this. All right. And I use that, the guys in a yeah, a circle will know that based on the dollar, yields, stocks, I can obviously work out pretty well the strength of the dollar. And we also used, I saw one question here asking about the EMAs. I've got the 200 and the 50 on. You can also utilize this. If the 50 is above the 200, you're going to look to buy. If it's below, you're going to look, to sell. Now, once you've obviously done that, and then you obviously hop on your chart, all right, you already know which direction you're going to take them. Yeah. All right, you don't have to panic and think, right, what strategy am I looking for? Is it a double bottom? Is it a third touch on a trend line? Is it a head and shoulders? Is it a key low level rejection? Is it a fair value gap? What am I looking for? Am I buying, selling? I'm just looking then at, where what prices has done previously. Yeah, all right, and I'll just mark up every area. All right, where price potentially, might have obviously gone. Say, for example, with, looking to go here. And then it's up to, me to then realize, right, what are the chances of this morning, because obviously I only trade, I do everything ready for obviously, London Open and New York Open. You can also do it for Asian Open, if you want to. But obviously then I'm just looking at, right, one, what the chances of some of these areas hitting, right? Because you've got to be realistic. There's no point having this one up here, because if price is busted up here, then chances are that there's a lot of continuation. So I'll then slowly cancel these out, right? And then obviously I'll choose one depending on how aggressive that I want to be. But remember, I know the direction I'm going to take it before I start drawing on. So obviously that's one thing that's important. So right, let's go through some more of these questions. Um, a lot of this relies on being able to monitor a lot of the day. How do you manage this? So I actually disagree with you here. All right. So for example, pound, yeah. All right. Pound didn't trigger us, right, until pound didn't trigger us for about till about 2:30. All right. Now you can put, use obviously buy, limits, sell limits. You can use alerts. you don't necessarily have to monitor it, and that's why I've designed it like this because it makes it very, very easy. All right, so you can obviously have everything preset. Yes, you got to do a little bit of work. All right, if you don't want to do any work, go and follow bots, and obviously yes, you will find out obviously what happens. But I don't think it's that much hard work to draw this on a chart and then measure up bottom, middle, top. You can put sell limits on all of these, and stop loss here, take profit here. And then, what I would do is put a couple of, alerts because, you want to know if this top of the range has been hit. And then you want to know, maybe as it's going into a bit of profit, and obviously, trading views brilliant. You just click on a alert, and then you can set whatever price is. That way, you don't have to look at anything. All right, you don't have to check anything. Nothing. All right, but yes, my kind of day revolves around. I'll do about an hour's research in the morning, and then I've done all my prep. Then I'm not going to change. All right, so everything's ready. I'm just waiting for price to come to me. I'm not going to go to price. All right, so I'm obviously waiting for things to happen. Yeah. So that then, what I'm then doing is, I haven't got my mobile on me, but obviously, yes, if I want to do anything, I mean, obviously, I go, live at 8. So normally, I'm doing bits until about 10:30 in the morning, but I'm then free for a couple of hours, and obviously, if I got trades open, nothing that I place because obviously we're trading around, high impact news happening, right? We don't ever have these crazy moves against us, all right? Even on gold, nothing happens, right? Because I manage how we trade and we trade round everything, all right? So that's obviously, one thing. Then obviously, yeah, I'm busy from probably 12 until 1, obviously researching for the afternoon. And then obviously once we're in our trades, yeah, I can, start monitoring from my mobile because I'm not going to change anything. All right. I don't need to check any more charts, I don't need to alter anything. I've done my prep work. I've got to trust it. All right. And obviously, as soon as you start, if you've done prep and you should trust it. If you don't, you start changing. You got to ask yourself, why. But obviously, I think we got a pretty strict plan. I think we got a pretty strict routine. We know the exact times that everything's being monitored. We got structure. We've got everything. So yeah. JJ, hi Dan. Do you mostly use limit orders in the zone or take manuals entry? I think that I sometimes use limit orders. Depends if I'm in front of the chart, then yes, I probably would just enter manually because I might have a chance of being like 5 pips into the zone. But obviously, if I'm not and I'm on the, wherever, if I'm going to the gym or if I'm going to play golf or if I'm, out with the kids or whatever, then yes, I will have it, set up top, middle, bottom, and, just obviously let it, roll. So yeah. Titus, are the two lines EMAs? Yep. I mean, these are the only indicators that I would use. If you see here, it's very, very, very easy. If obviously it's below the 200, so it's obviously indicators. It's the moving average. All right, that is what it is. And yeah, if I click on it here, you can see here input just change that bit to 200. All right, and then you just have to change this bit here to 50. Yeah. Style, you can have your own colors. I've got thinness, I've got a 40%. But obviously, this to me, intraday trading will just give you that extra confluence. Right, Alex, why did the dollar fail to hold level t today? I don't think it did. I think, me looking at the dollar as a bit of a failure would be dollar trading down here and testing this area. I just think this is a lot. Like I mentioned earlier on the, live, think of how much momentum was going with the dollar, last week, Friday, London Open. And, obviously all this, potential tariff chat, blah, blah, blah. But obviously, you've got to, think about, is there extra momentum with the dollar to push it past 98? Now, I don't think there is today. It's been a very, very, very good day for the dollar. Potentially, not even tomorrow, but we've got Friday, I think. We've obviously got some PMI. I don't know if there's enough extra, strength to kind of push it through, 98. So what I would expect is for us to be probably trading in this range for the rest of the week, which, unless obviously Trump's got a speech, I think it's at 2 in the morning, unless that brings in some random stuff. But I would expect price to be trading like this, which could make it very, very easy to trade. How do others manage if working a day job? I think, yeah, you're just going to have to be realistic. What you can do, and obviously this is a good question because obviously you do need to trade around your job. I don't recommend you, trying to work your job around trading. So obviously mastering trading is one thing, and then pulling out of your job and going full time. I had a chat with someone about this morning on a one to one. Coming out of your job and having that extra pressure is obviously, a whole different learning curve, so yeah, but I would try and obviously, think about how your job works, all right, what times you've got free, and then try and build trading round it. It might be that you're just monitoring for a bit, or you're playing around with trades in between your trading times, or you can, remember, all right, the beauty of trading is you could come here tonight, all right, let me just go back on here, and reenact today. All right. You don't have to place money on it to practice, There's, replay tools where, you can replay it. There's, you can just literally just draw it on. You don't have to put, money on it, but you can still, come home from work potentially in the evenings and practice. What do you think happened with FX trades this afternoon? Dollar struggling to cross 98. Yep. I mean, I wouldn't say, if you look at where they're all at, Aussie's starting to come back, pounds starting to come back, euro dropping, gold's going to stay in around this area. I do think it's going to finish the week higher. I actually think we're going to hit 5,300. USC JPY kind of staying where it is. I don't think we've been caught out. I just think price just hasn't, really moved very much. Sean, how would you advise or best to learn into stop letting a trade run and close it? For example, gold today, I let it run into a figure I was happy to lose, closed it, and then went back to entry and profit. Did enter back at the bottom, came out with a slight loss, but something that I can't shake. So this is what I was, speaking about earlier, Sean. If you draw a, zone and then structure it, so maybe split your gold entry into, three, and then, you might have your three entries here, and then, like I'd said, you're gonna actually get used to it being in drawdown, and there'll be a part of you, that will actually want it to actually go into a bit of drawdown because you're going to want it to tap here, before it then goes up. And so, yeah, that's obviously one thing that I think, it's quite common. How did you approach today's trade on gold from the start of the day? So gold, gold is this week is very easy. You just got to buy it. All right. It's there are times with gold it's easier, and there are times, where it's a bit harder. But obviously gold right now with the tariffs, with the US and Iraq, I read today that China are sending Iraq some bombers or something. I can't quite remember, but obviously everything that war's hotting up. That's going to bring uncertainty and obviously push money into gold. We've got this tariff talk, which has gone a bit quiet. That's going to bring uncertainty and push some money into gold. We've then got everyone's inflation is, low. We've got some inflation data coming out tomorrow, I think it is. We've got Aussie and Euro. If obviously that comes in below expected, that's going to release the pressure on them. They're more likely to reduce interest rates. With lower interest rates, gold is going to, have more investment in it because everyone's going to get more for their money from gold than obviously, European bonds, US bonds, Aussie bonds. What is your prediction on gold? I've do you prefer your entries on the 15 minute or 2 hour? I only stick to the 2 hour. I don't look at candles now. I don't, I just look at price. All right. I don't, I'm trying to work out how to portray it, but I've been exposed. Luckily, this person who I met just after Christmas, actually, he um he explained obviously how trading view and candles were, they designed. And obviously it's built for obviously retail, to gamify it. There's lots of brokers or majority of the bigger brokers are involved because they want us to master all these patterns. I mean, think about these, how stupid these patterns are, like, head and shoulders, third touch. Like, you're actually gonna be able to draw this on here and then trust that, right, one, two, oh my God, that's a third touch. Yes, I've entered it. But this is, subjective because obviously you might enter here, and this might be your third touch, or you might enter. It's just yeah, stupid. Um, and some of the head and shoulders I've seen are crazy, but yeah, so I only stick to 2 hour. And I only look at price and trend and obviously macro outlook. That's all. Tides, are you looking for liquidity and supply and demand zone? Gold was perfect example, swept all the zones in the morning. Yeah, so I don't like ICT. I'm not going to pretend that I do, but yes, I understand what you're looking for. Yes, I do look for previous price, in regards to what has actually happened. I actually, if I'm honest, I had 120 marked up as my top. I had 120. I just couldn't see it tapping, so that's why I raised it to 140. But I kind of wish that I'd have kept it at 120. But yeah, so. Hey Dan, after tonight's explanation, um, sorry, it's gone up. There we go. After tonight's explanation, you set three limit orders for each trade, then so you can get those stepped entries, or do you enter the city? It all depends. Just like I'd said, if you're struggling, lower your overall lots, slightly, and obviously have the expectation. I don't have many of you, message. You're obviously not one of them. But obviously, whenever any trades in a bit of drawdown, I get the same people messaging me, asking me, yeah, blah blah blah. Well, are you holding? Is this happening? Is it okay? When actually, if my trade, is set up a bit like this, and price is within this, zone, yes, of course, like it's fine. Have you ever tried the three touch trend line method? I've tried everything. I there isn't one trend at the beginning that I didn't start. I'm sorry. Like, if you want to be realistic, you've got to yeah, be, realistic in regards to, you know, you are not gonna make money from drawing a line on a chart and just hoping with no like I do not understand how no one gets how fundamentals are the reason why markets are obviously moving the way they are, whether they're moving up, down, quick, slow, sideways. Like it is not because of technicals, all right? Price doesn't reach 5 to 40 and then suddenly think, oh, you know what, it hit this in, it hit this at the end of Jan and it's rejected because of that and it's a double top. But if I go on an 8 hour, even though it looks like it on none of the other time frames, it's rejected and there's a fair value gap and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work like that. All right, it doesn't work like that. It's because, things in the world are happening and it's all we're doing in FX is trying to, we've got two pairs and we're trying to work out which one is stronger and which one is weaker. That's our only job, and we're obviously not going to get it right all the time. Okay, that made sense, but I'm running off iPhone, where you don't have alerts. Yep, you've got alerts on the Trading View app, so I wouldn't use a MetaTrader to place any trades. I'd use the Trading View app, and obviously then yeah, that's going to be a lot easier. How do you connect MT5 accounts to TV? Or wouldn't you bother? What do you mean TV? Greg, I did the three entries on GBP today, kept going, and the dollar continued to weaken. I took a stop that wiped out my profits. Found the day was quite frustrating. This is what I struggle with most, but I'm getting better at it. You know what? That's okay, Greg. You know, so yeah, it's not a problem at all. Remember, all right, the reason why my stops are the way the places where they are. All right, you can see here's trend, right? All right, trend. We've obviously got an equal high here, right? If this high is broken, yeah. All right, if this area here is broken, all right, and obviously price did bust up, all right, well, we're then gonna close, all right, or stop losses. Why? Because trend would have changed, yeah, all right, and this is why don't put your stop loss in a random spot. I can see lots of guys playing it above the zone here. It's pointless. I obviously put my stop losses where trend is going to change, all right? And obviously that's why they don't get hit much because trend, even this is a prime example here. Yes, we're back to entry, but obviously trend hasn't changed and it's gone with us. The only thing with that, Dan, is I find you're a lot more blasé when on a practice account. Yeah, that's true. Sean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Thanks. Only gold, I do it. Yeah. How's the 1K account looking? I actually stopped it after a week. I think I did. I think I posted it. I think on zero point 0.1 and 0.01, I think I did like 200 quid or 250 quid. So yeah, I was pretty happy. Um, so yeah, Weber. Oh, there we go. Not been on here for ages. Do you still use various strategies in your course, such as Tokyo Drift, etc.? No, I don't. I've just since obviously I had a bit of a breakthrough epiphany, meeting when I was in Dubai, middle of November, and obviously. Yeah, obviously I like to you guys, now I'm, on, LinkedIn, I'm hunting down hedge fund owners. I'm trying to pay to obviously have a, meeting with them to obviously suck all of their, knowledge out. And obviously I had a really, really good one in Dubai. And obviously, yeah, he kind of highlighted what my, strengths are. And then he highlighted, how there were things that I should be doing that I could, simplify. And actually, if macros, once you start to understand it, um, then obviously, you can get macros like 99% right, all right, because it's data, it's been published, it's there, all right. Dollar trend, you can get that 99% right as long as you're trading round, things that are obviously happening, So if you've got a 99% accuracy here and then a 99% accuracy here, every trade that you're entering, even if you get it wrong, a bit like this one, it's going to come back because overall trend, overall, macros right now, yes, pound strengthened up this afternoon, but did pound strengthen or did US dollar just weaken slightly? Right. And then obviously, once it got to a stage of, level where it wasn't happy with, it's then pumped back up, So that's exactly what's happened here. Then fair value gaps, breaking hearts. Thanks, Dan. Trading view. Could you explain more about how to place, stop loss? Yes. So basically, all right. The easiest way is you got to identify trend, yeah? All right. So like I mentioned here, this is our trend here. All right. So we would expect this, it doesn't always run smoothly. This is our, lower high here, yeah? All right, price we would expect to make a new lower low. All right, that's not happened. We've come in and then equaled this high. All right, so you would want to, highlight this area, yeah? All right, before this has actually happened here, yeah? All right, so the reason why stop loss was up here, all right, was because, yes, if this breaks, all right, and obviously if our stop loss is hit, right, it means that this, rather than becoming resistance, this is trading like 101, rather than becoming resistance, it becomes, support, and obviously trend has changed, right? So I always pat my stop loss, all right, where trend would have to change, and that's why it doesn't get hit much. So yeah, Thomas, on a positive note, my GBPUSD drawdown earlier, now I'm nearly back to entry, should be in profit. Angel, what's the difference between range and consolidation? It's pretty much the, same. All right, pretty much the, same. All right, you're just looking. Here's a good example here where price. I mean, I think for beginners, this is the best thing to trade. All right, the only trouble is it doesn't happen often. I mean, it does on, certain pairs like USD CAD, but obviously, it doesn't happen often. So all you're looking for is obviously price to start, ranging, start consolidating, it's exactly the same thing. And then you want to wait for a breakout and then a retest, and then obviously, you can capitalize on it. But yeah, and you can use whatever time frame, anything, but you're just looking where prices, sticking to a, same area. I mean, gold, it's sometimes it's quite easy to obviously identify on something like gold. You'd have to go down a lower time frame because what gold tends to do, right? You can see here, like, there's a couple of examples. It will make its move up and then it will consolidate, all right? And then you've got to wait for its move down. It will then consolidate, yeah, all right? And then it makes its move up. You can see here, all the times it kind of, moves up, all right? This area here, consolidates, yeah, right? Then, we're stuck in this for a bit. Once it breaks up, it carries on, So that's kind of what you're, looking for. All right, but yeah, they're probably the easiest things to trade because all you're looking for is a breakout. All right, just a breakout either way. So yeah, right. I'm gonna have to make this the last one. So the stop loss comes slightly above the last. Yeah, high. Yeah, you've got to basically think that structure or trend has to change. And that's the only thing that's gonna invalidate your trade. All right. So, right, guys, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Welcome, obviously, anyone who's not in the channel. And if you aren't in, you got to ask yourself why. Because obviously there isn't very many people out there who can hammer out the questions with the confidence that I can. So, yeah, yeah, right. Have a great evening. We'll obviously be back trading early in the morning. I will. This obviously is recorded, so obviously I'll upload it to YouTube a bit later on. But have a good one, guys. Appreciate everybody turning up. So enjoy your evenings. Have a good one.